you will see a lot more information about the scheme, who is eligible for the scheme, and the different aspects of the scheme. But I'll be going through each of those this afternoon. So don't worry too much. It's a lot of information to read at once. And so we suggest that, people read it in portions, small portion, rather than trying to read all the information at once. Just focus on the bit that you need help with and you need to understand. So my name is Garrick. I'm a co-founder of Justice for Windrush Generation. I'm located in the northwest of England, just across from Liverpool in Cheshire. I'm a second generation Windrush generation. And I'd like now to introduce my colleague, Roland. Can you just introduce yourself and your location, please?
Good afternoon, everyone. Hope you can hear me okay. Good afternoon, good evening, good night, wherever in the world you are. My name is Roland Houslin, co-founder of Justice for Windrush Generation. The meeting at the moment is being recorded. Please avoid putting your cameras on, and for a couple of reasons, for your privacy, as well as better audio experience. It's not important for us to see you unless we actually ask you to do so. Please keep your cameras off. Also, try to mute your mic and only unmute when you are speaking. I'll leave it there for now. You will hear me later on again. Thank you.
Just tell us your location, Roland, please.
I'm located in Twickenham, on the outskirts of London.
Thank you very much. Now, we have a Zoom user. Can we have a name, please? Because we need to know who is on the platform. So there's a Zoom user with no name. Please identify yourself so we know that it's a safe call. If you prefer to put your camera on and just say who you are, then that would be helpful. Can I also encourage everyone to use the chat at the bottom of the screen? You will see a number of symbols, reaction for raising your hand, and the chat button at the bottom. Can you also tell us if this is the first time you've joined the platform? You can do that in the chat. And can you also tell us your location, what part of the UK you're located in? And if you're outside the UK, please tell us the country. And this is helpful information for us to know the reach and where people are coming in from. And if you found information by word of mouth, you can say that is how you found it. If you found it by any other means, you can tell us in the chat how you found the information. All this is very helpful for us to know how we're communicating with our Sunday chat. As I said, they operate twice a month, second and last Sunday of each month. The login is exactly the same every time, so it's repeat. You don't need to worry about a new login. It's always the same. And the Eventbrite platform is where we promote our activities. Everything we do is promoted on the Eventbrite platform. So keep in touch with that, and then you will know what's happening. There will be an opportunity for us to check what's on. So if people know that there's other things going on, they can share that towards the end of the session. And also, what we say, although it's informal, we try to keep this informal and impartial. If you need to raise any question or issues, we don't really want you to go into your individual personal case. If you want a question surrounding that, we're happy to do that, to answer your question. But if you require further assistance after this session, we will give you contact number and contact email and WhatsApp, how you can get in touch. So try and keep your situation confidential. You can give a scenario, yes, that's fine, but we're not going to be discussing personal cases on this open platform. This platform is designed exclusively to give you information about the scheme, and also for you to check whether you are eligible to apply to the scheme. We'll go into that in a moment. And then should you require further assistance after you've done that, then we will give you the contact information, how you can get further assistance. So once again, welcome to our Sunday chat. It is afternoon in the UK. It may be morning in Jamaica at the moment, yes. And it may be good night where other places down under. Okay. So just before I begin, let me just go back and just check. Did we identify who the Zoom user is? Okay, I think we're okay with that now. Okay. So Roland, you just keep your eye on the contacts, please. We don't want any Zoom bomber coming in and disrupting our session. Thank you. So let's have a conversation, because that's exactly what we're going to be doing this afternoon. So the Windrush compensation scheme, many of us only heard about this following the Windrush scandal in 2018, when the scandal broke. Other people may have known about this before, but it became sort of national 2018. And what we try to do is to help people to understand, firstly, the Windrush generation. And the background, the Windrush generation is the generation that arrived in 1948 on Empire Windrush. That is the first generation. And the timeline for the Windrush generation and descendants continue from 1948 all the way up to present day, 2024. So we talk about the first generation, and we talk about second generation, third, fourth, and fifth. Sometimes you will hear language as Windrush descendants. We also use that term. I'm also a descendant of second generation. So we hear those various terms being used. Just to help us appreciate the different generation, my parents were the first generation. They arrived in the 50s in the UK. I joined my parents in the 60s. My children are third, and I have grandchildren age 15 and 16, and they are fourth generation. And when they have their children, that will be another generation, that will be fifth generation. Last year, we celebrated the 75th anniversary of Windrush arriving. And that coincided with the celebration of the NHS 75th anniversary, that the Windrush generations were part of developing NHS provision. And when we talk about Windrush, we need to understand the broader history around Windrush. That it's not just one generation, it's continued. The other thing that's important is dates. And the reason why I suggest you get a piece of paper and a pen so that you can make some notes for yourself. So dates are important. 1948 up to 2024, that's the big timeline. But what we're concerned about is how to check who is eligible to apply to the Windrush compensation scheme and status. And so there is guidelines produced by the Home Office for us to check against our situation. So the first thing we want to do is to know the importance of these dates. Now, we're going to give you information which referred to people from the Commonwealth countries, and we're going to give you information for people from the rest of the world. Right. So, this is what, sorry, there's somebody, audio is on. I need to just keep that audio off.
It didn't take long for the blaze to take.
Thank you. Let me go back. So let's just focus on people from the Commonwealth nations or countries. And the guidance from the Home Office as to who is eligible to apply to either scheme reads as follows. Under who can apply, you can apply if you came to the UK from a Commonwealth country before 1973. Let me repeat. You came from a Commonwealth country before 1973. The next one, your parent or your grandparent came to the UK from a Commonwealth country, again, the same date, before 1973. So we have a date, 1973. Either your grandparent or your parent or yourself. Yes? You must be in the UK by that date, 1973. You came to the UK from any country, notice the point, any country, before the 31st of December, 1989, and are settled here. That word is important, settled. Not just coming in and going out, settle. You settle here. So what that is telling us, that the first test is, when did you arrive in the UK? And from which country did you arrive from, whether Commonwealth or non-Commonwealth? And the other important thing is not just yourself. You also need to be checking against your family, your grandparents, and your parents. When did they arrive? Okay. And also, what were their status? And we'll talk more about that as we break it down into bite size. So Commonwealth country, 1973. Any other country, December 1988. But notice the caveat, settle, must be settled in the UK. Then we have other things to consider. Not everybody know about their grandparents or their parents, because they may have died without you knowing and getting in certain information. Okay? But you do need to know, and your family, other members of the family might be able to help you. Okay? The reason why we say this is because we also need to know what status, if any, our parents or grandparents had, because that will have an impact on yourself. Okay? So we need to understand that and know that. So I've given you so far two dates, 1973 and 1988. Now, Justice for Windrush generation always emphasized this point. The first thing you would check is your status. Some say status, depends on your pronunciation. The first thing you will check is your status. Right? Having checked your status, out of that may, and I use the word may, arise some issues because you could not prove your status. You didn't have the necessary documentation to show that what status you have. An example of not having the documentation could be that you arrive as a child in the UK and you didn't arrive with a passport because it wasn't required. Or maybe you travel on another family member passport at that time. Okay? All these things are important. Okay? Now, we know that when the scandal broke in 2018, people's documentation, many people were concerned as to what led to this situation. And there are a couple of different versions out there as to the Home Office, whether the Home Office deliberately destroyed documentation, whether the documentation was lost in the process of moving from paper to digital, or it was deliberate. We don't know. There's all these theories. What we do know that the Home Office had your documentation at one point. Everyone that come into the country would have some evidence that they came in, whether you're coming on a plane or coming on a ship. Records would be there. Okay? So what we're asked to produce is evidence to show we're entitled to our rectifying our status. And we'll talk about that as we go through. So I'll do this very slowly because we need to get this thought. Arriving in the UK before 1973, arriving in the UK before 1988, and settle, have settled status. Okay. Now, there were many individuals who experienced difficulty to say the least. Maybe that's a kind word. Many had employment for a number of years, and there was no issues. They would go to work and they would work and they have their wages and they come home and they have their mortgage and they have everything. Everything is fine. And then after 10, 20 years or so, employer bring that individual into the office and say, you know, I need to check your status and you have the right to be here to work. And they thought, oh, well, I haven't got any papers. I was born here. Or I came here when I was a child. And the employer wouldn't be happy with just that statement because there's no proof. So the employer now is saying, I'm sorry, I've got to dismiss you. Right? You now lose your job. Yeah? After 20 odd years of working for that employer. Losing your job, there are consequences that follow. You can't pay your mortgage for your house. Your children can't go to university. You find that your bank account is now closed because all this information is being circulated to different organizations within government, that you don't have any papers. You have nothing to prove you have the right to be here. So I'm sorry, we can't help you. So wherever you go to get some help, the doors are closing. Okay? Now, can you imagine the impact of all that on a family? Can you imagine the stress, the trauma, the anxiety that a family now experience? All their livelihood, everything now, it's like the world has just crushed them to pieces. Wherever they turn to get help, doors are closed. Okay. That is an example to show you impact. And the Home Office use various terms. Let me just go back to this point. If you suffer loss or if you've been impacted because you could not produce the necessary documentation that you have the right to be here and also to work and to access public services. Let me read out some of the losses that would have happened. It is not an exhaustive list, but it just give you some idea of how not having the right documentation or any documentation, how that would impact on an individual and family. So the Home Office says you might be able to get compensation for losses. Notice it says you might, doesn't say definite, because there's certain things you have to fulfill. You might be able to get for loss of employment. I just gave you that example of losing your job. Immigration fees that you had to pay lawyers for immigration to get certain documentation. Housing. When we say housing, that would be either council housing or housing association, social housing, etc. Health, not having the access to the NHS anymore because now you're deemed to not be legal, of a better phrase. Education, I mentioned your children who are aspiring to go to university or college can no longer go because they had to fulfill certain criteria. Then driving license, you apply for a driving license and you can't get one. Don't forget, your information is now being circulated across public services in the UK. Banking, you had a bank account, but now your bank account has been closed and you can't get another account. Daily life, for example, you miss major family event or could not travel. Yeah, so you had other family members elsewhere, but you could not travel because you didn't have documentation in order to travel. So you miss maybe a funeral, maybe a wedding, maybe a graduation. You know, you miss all of these important things. Detention and removal. Detention means you've been locked in detention centers. Lots of those around the UK where people locked up. We use the term detention and removal. Sometimes people say deportation. People have been removed, being deported from the UK back to their country of origin. Sometimes country that they've never been to before. Don't know anything about that country because their parents came from that country, but all they knew was their British life here in the UK. Living costs, for example, rent, utilities, contribution towards food, household, essential travel, and prescription charges for medication. There are just some examples of loss that an individual would have experienced as a result of not having the documentation to show they have the right to be here in the UK, but also have the right to public services, which we take for granted. You just walk and get NHS treatment, etc., etc. Yes, yes. And then suddenly, none of this is available to you and your family. Okay. As I said, think about the trauma that will follow all these things. Roland, I still need to know who the Zoom user is, please. There's no name. Please, can the user of the Zoom user?
I think I know who it is.
No, I need to know who the person is and put their name or just identify themselves because we don't want this disruption in the call, please.
Okay, my name is Musa Jebak. I've just joined back. I've spoken about it before. I mentioned my name before in the chat.
Okay,
thank you.
yes, because you was in before. You went out.
As I said, I know him. So
thank you. Yeah. So that is not a definitive list of loss that an individual or a family will suffer. Let me repeat some of those: employment, immigration fees, housing, health, education, driving license, banking, daily life. You miss family event, travel, etc. Detention, removal, living costs, your rent, utility, contribution to household, essential, travel, and prescription charges. Okay. So I'm sure there are people on the call today who says they know exactly how because they've experienced that. See? And we know, because we talk to people and they tell us, We know. So some to a greater degree, we know, and everybody's story is different and their experience is different. Okay. So now that we've just given you the eligibility criteria, that you fulfill the criteria and you says, yes, there's no issue. I was here before 1973. I was here before 1988. I was here settled, etc., etc. Yes, fine. Then it follows, you've lost a number of losses that you've had. There are people, homeless, living on the street, living with friends and family members, living on their sofa for how many years, and their issue has not been resolved. We know this. Okay. So the Home Office have status. So some is only interested in getting their status and getting their paper. They say, I'm not interested in anything else. That's up to them. First step, as we said, is checking our status. Get that right. The next step, if you've been impacted or you suffer loss, then compensation scheme. Okay. So then the next thing we have is different claimants that can apply to the scheme. When we say different claimant, we're talking about primary. The first one is primary claimant. That's the individual making that claim is a primary claimant. So I'm going to focus on that one first. Primary claimant making a claim. As I said, is for the individual, that person who have fulfilled the eligibility criteria making that claim or submitting an application for a claim. Now, the Home Office provide guidance, written guidance, pages of it, right, for each of the claims. So there is guidance for primary claimants, 44 pages. And again, this is public information. It's out there. .gov.uk/Windrush compensation scheme, primary claimant. It's there, you can find it. So 44 pages around primary claimant application. One of the things we try to do in the Sunday chat is to break things down so that you know the step to take. Yes, step by step. So if we have a primary claimant making the claim, having read the guidance of 44 pages, 1, 2, 3, maybe 4 times, as many times as you need to, we always recommend, before you make the formal application online, you get a rough sheet of paper or several sheets of paper, and you go against each of the question with the guidance, because the guidance is designed to help you to understand what need to be written on that question. So it is important for you to read and reread and reread the guidance first before you start writing anything on paper. Now, it is true, and we make no apology for this, not everyone can read the guidance and follow the instruction and complete the application, because there may well be a number of reasons why an individual might not be able to do it on their own. They may have learning disability issues. They may have physical health issues that prevent them from responding to things as quickly as they can, maybe a bit slower. Some people have had stroke and everything has changed in the brain, so they need some help. It is also true that those applications that's been completed by individual without any assistant, the success rates are low. And sometimes they're surprised that the Home Office doesn't award them anything. I'll tell you why that is. Because the information that they have transcribed on the application, when the Home Office receive that information, start to read of what impact, what loss that they have suffered, the Home Office have concluded that they haven't suffered any loss because they've not expressed that in their application. And we have many examples where after a claim has been rejected and the individual gets some help, the claim then succeeds. Better outcome. What that is telling us, that we do need help with the application process. So let me go back to the primary claimant and the guidance, 44 pages. You read the guidance several times, and then you look across and see the question, and then out of that, you formulate your responses, your answers. But as I said, don't put that on the complete application yet. Put it on an A4, piece of paper or a notepad, and at a later date, when you have checked with other family members or friend or somebody with a bit more knowledge about the claim, say, could you have a look at this for me? Yeah, this is my application. What do you think? And the person will give you some help and support and say, oh, well, you haven't said enough here. What does that mean? Right? And what does this mean here? Right? That's why we need the rough yeah, the rough paper, like when we used to write our essay, and we start and we say, oh, this paper, and we start again. And in particular, as I mentioned, there are particular groups of people that will need more additional help because of their situation. There is no shame in any of that at all. You seeking help because you can't do it or you do not understand, please seek help. I'll tell you where you can get help in a moment. Let's stay with the primary claimant. And you now have the questions and the guidance. And when you look at the question, the first thing you're asked to complete is your personal information. Your personal information is your name, your date of birth, your address, your national insurance, all your personal information you're asked to complete. And it's very important that you observe this point. Make sure your personal information, your full name, is exactly how it is written on your birth certificate. Yeah, letter by letter. If you're known by any other name, there is a place for that to be recorded. Many of us have adopted other names. Many of us from birth had what we call pet name. And some of us has known somebody with that name for 40 years, didn't even know they had another name because that's what we knew them as. And I know there are cases where people's passport had the wrong name and it caused problem. Yeah. So make sure your personal information is correct. First name, Christian name, we call it, first name, surname. Some of us have got middle name. Some have got hyphen. Okay. Make sure it is exactly how it is on your birth papers. You started to complete your personal information. As you go down the application, there's a question that asks you about what has happened to you, what loss you suffer. Bear in mind, this could be 30 years ago, could be 40 years ago. So now you've got to go back and remember the situation that surrounded you at that time, what had happened to you, and then try to collect that out of your head and start to put it on paper, which is your story over that period of time. And you've got to put it in such a way that it is making sense. And if you can put it in the order that things have happened to you, chronological order, that would be excellent. So you can put it, forward and then go backward. But it will make sense when the readers start to read and see time span, years. Yeah, what particular year that happened. Yeah, when did that start? Did that ever finish? Yeah. All this information is going to help your claim. Yeah. And it is not a one-liner, because there's no way you can express what has happened to you in a one line. That is why it's important to get your story, get it out. That's been buried there for a long time. Okay. Let's give you an example of some time when things have happened to us, but we didn't even remember until we started to talk about it. See? So you travel out of the UK. When you return at the airport, they stop you and say, "Excuse me, sir, can you come over here into that place over there?" And they interview you or spend some time with you, finding out where you've been, what you've been doing, etc., etc. Everybody else has gone through custom and gone to get home, get their family, pick them up and everything. But you're stuck here. And you were in that room for about 45, 50 minutes, maybe an hour. What we say to people, that is referred to as detention. You're being detained for that period of time. So make sure that period of time, if it exceeds 30 minutes, that need to be recorded in your losses, that you were detained at Gatwick or Heathrow for 45, 50 minutes, coming back from XY on this date, year, whatever it may be. And because it happened more than once, you just think it's normal. Yeah? You never thought anything of it. Okay? But it is part of your claim and is part of suffering loss or being impacted. Okay? So we spoke about the primary claimant being the first person who make that claim. And we talk about the guidance being 44 pages, must be consulted, must be read. Don't ever try to fill out an application without reading the guidance. And that applies to everything. You buy a new television, a new phone, whatever it is, right? There's instruction there. It tells you. Yeah. Don't try to bypass it. And then, you blow up the equipment or something go wrong, right? There's a reason why the instruction is there. Follow the instruction. Follow the guidance. You're not able to read because you haven't got the reading skill, etc. Get some help from somebody. Now, getting help from somebody is the other bit that we'd like now to give to you as some additional information. And this is where you need your pen and paper. There are different organizations out there that can help, but we're promoting the one that we're working with. So Liverpool Advocates for Windrush, they help with application. Yes. And you can go onto the website, listen, Liverpool Advocates for Windrush.org. Liverpool, Advocates for Windrush.org. You'll see a symbol, law. We promote our service this way. This is information, and the website is there. Please visit the website. Email address is there. Telephone contact is there. If you need some help, the advocates will be able to assist you. Okay. Doesn't matter where you're located, whether you're in the Northwest, whether you're in Liverpool, whether you're in London, whether you're in Birmingham, it doesn't matter. We've got advocates in Birmingham. Okay. So reach out for some help. So just to recap before I leave primary claimant, what I've said, after checking your eligibility criteria, and yes, I fulfill that, then the next step is, okay, I'm going to make an application. And you now consult the guidance of 44 pages for primary claimant, and you start to put your information down. And I said, you need help with getting that information out of your head on paper, then seek some help. Liverpool advocates are there to offer that help. So that's primary claimant. I'm going to leave primary claimant now. I'm going to move on to another area of claim called close family members. And close family members is exactly what it says on the tin. Somebody, close family, who's helping and supporting that primary claimant. I'm going to ask Roland now to come in and tell us about close family members application. Roland?
Hello, good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever in the world you are. If you just joined us and you did not hear the introduction earlier on, my name is Roland Ouslin, co-founder of Justice for Windrush Generation with Gary that was just presenting. So I'm going to talk to you about close family members, and hopefully at the end of my presentation, you'll have a better understanding who can make an application as a close family member. So Gary mentioned to you earlier, and I explained to you about the primary claimant. Just to reiterate, if you are eligible to make a claim as a primary claimant if, one, you came from a Commonwealth country before the 1st of January 1973, or you came from any country before the 1st of January 1989, or you were born in the UK. I repeat that because this is missed by quite a number of potential claimants. You were born in the UK and your parent or grandparent came from a Commonwealth country before the 1st of January 1989, or your parent or grandparent were born in the UK. It's a bit more to it than that. It needs a bit more explaining, to be honest with you. But what I say, especially for those that were born in the UK, if you were born in the UK and your parent or grandparent came from a Commonwealth country, you need to put out some effort and try to have a better understanding of the scheme. As we speak at the moment, I'm not going to mention any name. There's one particular individual in here that his parent and grandparent came from a Commonwealth countries. One came from one particular Commonwealth country in Africa. One came from another Commonwealth country in Africa. He was born here around about 1988. Okay, that's not the date, but I'm going to use that for now. Was born around about 1988, and he had issues getting a British passport. That situation is not unique to him. There are quite a number of individuals that were born in the UK and lived in the UK continuously, have never lived in the UK, still had issues getting a British passport. Again, I'm not going to go into the intricacies and the details as to how that situation has, how that occurred and how that can occur. And I'm doing that deliberately because I genuinely want anyone that was born in the UK to go out there and find out, well, to get further information about the scheme. Okay, on many occasions, we have individuals that were born in the UK and their lives were impacted, have been impacted over a number of years. But because they do not understand the scheme and the heads of claim and what impact is, etc., they assume that they are not eligible to apply to the scheme, one, and they are not entitled to compensation or to use the scheme to resolve their immigration stroke issues in the UK. Okay, so there are two elements to the scheme. There's compensation, that is to how your life has been impacted, whether employment, can't use the NHS, bank account, driving license, etc., compensation. But there's also the status side, where you can resolve your immigration status issues using the Windrush scheme. That's commonly called a compensation scheme, but it's the Windrush scheme actually, and there are two elements to it: status and compensation. So Gary went through the eligibility criteria for applying to the scheme for you to be eligible. But there's eligibility and there's entitlement. Eligibility and entitlement. So he went through that for primary claimant. But there are three categories to the scheme. There is primary claimant, there's deceased estate, and then there's close family member. I'm going to talk about close family member. However, you need to have a good understanding of primary and deceased. There's absolutely no difference between a primary claim, which Gary explained earlier, and a deceased estate claim. I repeat that. There's absolutely no difference between a primary and a deceased estate claim, except, that word is very important, except that that individual that would have been eligible to apply to the scheme as a primary claimant and entitled to compensation is now deceased. Sorry to be so crude, but a deceased estate claim is a deceased primary claimant. Okay, close family member. In order to be eligible to apply as a close family member, to apply to the scheme as a close family member, you need to be a close family member of a primary claimant that Garrett explained, or a deceased individual that would have been eligible and entitled. You need to be a close family member of a deceased, of a primary claimant or a deceased primary claimant, crudely speaking. So when you say close family members can apply, which close family members are we talking about? You're talking about your great-grand-aunt or your great-grand-uncle or your cousin removed or the cousin of your wife or in-laws and so on and so forth. No, it's a specific group we're talking about. And the group that we're talking about is as follows. One, you are the wife or husband of the deceased or the primary claimant, eligible and entitled, or you are the parent, mother and father, deceased are primary claimant. Thirdly, you are the siblings, brother and sister, or you are the children of the primary or the deceased individual, sons and daughters, or you are an individual that has lived with the primary claimant or the deceased individual in a relationship, so to speak, for 2 years or more, and you were living in the UK legally. I should have said earlier, all these close family members would have had to be living in the UK lawfully, without being under indefinite leave to remain, etc., while this individual's life was impacted. Now, to a certain extent, there's a bit of ambiguity there when it comes to whether you were living in the UK or not, or if you're outside the UK when you're going to make the application. But if you engage with us, we can go further into that. Now, there's another category, so to speak, that may be able, family members that may be able to apply to the scheme. And frankly, at this stage, it's not that clear. And it is stepchildren and step-parent. Okay, we need to get further clarification on that from the caseworkers. Some changes were made around about on the 16th of January. However, that's not very clear from my understanding anyway. Others may have a different interpretation or a different understanding. So the close family members, wife or husband, parent, siblings, children, anyone that lived in a relationship for 2 years or more. But as you may notice, I didn't mention any numbers. I did not say 2 sisters can apply or 2 children. There's no restriction. So let's assume that the deceased individual with a eligible and entitled claim had 7 children, had 8 brothers and sisters. Mother and father is still alive. His children can apply, or their children can apply. The 6 or 7 children can apply. The 8 brothers and sisters can apply as well. His mother or their mother and father can apply as well. And his wife that he divorced after going through the issue for about 4, 5, 6, 7 years. In the 4th year of this individual going through this issue, the wife or husband got divorced. And a year or 2 later, they got involved in another relationship and lived with this individual for 2 years or more. So in this case, that scenario, the ex-wife, former wife, or whatever term we want to use, can apply to the scheme. The new partner, that relationship lived with 2 years or more, cannot apply to the scheme. The 5, 6, or 7 children can apply to the scheme. And the 5, 6, 7, or 8 brothers can also apply to the scheme. And his mother or their mother and father can apply to the scheme as well, on the back of that single primary or deceased entitled and eligible claim. And it's not because they have supported this individual financially, it's due to these main facts. How their lives was impacted emotionally, inconvenience, anxiety, etc., etc. I'm going to give an analogy here, crude it may be, but I hope you'll get a better understanding from it. You are stood at the bus stop. 3 brothers, all you 3 brothers and sisters. 5 of you at the bus stop, and you're all brothers and sisters. The 6th sibling, the 6th brother, was in a car and involved in a car accident in front of you. They were in the car directly impacted. You were only at the bus stop, these family members, and they observed that. Owing to the fact they saw that accident and have to assist with taking the individual to the hospital and nursing him in, etc., etc., over a period of time, it impacted them emotionally, inconvenienced them, etc., etc. So there will be some that spend, be it taxi fare, etc., etc., to assist this individual, and there are others that would not have. Those that spend getting him to the hospital, etc., they can make a claim. Let's step away from the analogy now. So in the case of a primary claimant, these family members that saw this individual homeless, being homeless, they may have given him money to go in a homeless shelter, buy them food, phone calls, etc., etc. That may be only 2 or 3 individuals that supported him. However, the whole family went through the whole emotional roller coaster, so to speak, inconvenience, etc., so they can all apply due to how their lives was impacted emotionally, inconvenienced, etc., etc. That is why I have that case that I'm working on at the moment where there's 1 primary claimant, but from that 1 primary claimant, you've got 10, 12 claims within that family due to that primary claim. Okay. At this point, hope you've gotten better understanding of a close family member claim. I'm gonna hand back to Gary. This is a good time to ask questions about close family member claim, because that list that I gave you is not exhaustive. It's a bit more cheap than that. And it is a case by case basis. You would have to provide evidence to establish that you're related with, by using passport. Birth certificate is one of the most impactful evidence you can use. If that person was living with you in the same house, proof of address, etc., etc. If you supported them financially, or you sent the money to them electronically, bank transfer, etc., etc. So I will invite questions at this point in time. Gary, back to you, please. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Roland. So you notice Roland was focusing on the close family application. And you also notice it didn't give you a definitive number of people who can make a claim. It gave you some example so that you get the sense of how a family might be impacted by a changed situation. Again, we always refer to the guidance for close family claim. I'm just reading directly from the guidance. If you are applying as a close family member, you must show that you experience a loss because a family member could not prove that they had the right to live in the UK. And then it gave some example as what Roland said. The family member must be a partner, parent, child, brother, sister, etc. But they must be eligible. Yes, notice the word again, being eligible. And we keep referring to the guidance. So we said there are guidance for each of the claim, primary, close, and deceased. Guidance is there. Roland?
Yeah, I just want to elaborate on the guidance note. Now, there are a number of guidance notes. You got the three categories. You got for compensation, you got a close family member, primary, deceased, and close family member, deceased estate and close family member. For each of those applications, there is a guidance note. Also, I spoke about the status element for making a status application for returning resident visa if you're outside the UK. For those people who lived there for a period of time, came from a Commonwealth country, left the UK for more than 2 years, consequently lost the indefinite leave to remain, they can make an application for a returning resident visa to come back to the UK. There are criteria.
No,
Hold
which
on,
one?
let me mute that first. Please, if you're not speaking, please mute yourself. Hold on. Gary, can you still hear me?
Yes.
So there's a guidance note for the status element. Obviously, those that were born in the UK can use the status as well element to regularize the status. So guidance for close family member, deceased estate, primary claim, and also status. But there's also the caseworker guidance. There are two caseworker guidance. This is the guidance note that is actually used by the caseworkers, or what they should use. And in many cases, they have chosen to actually ignore the guidance note. Guidance note for status, caseworker guidance for status, and also caseworker guidance note for compensation. The caseworker guidance for status is 54 pages long. The caseworker guidance for compensation is 104 pages. I say that because there are a number of individuals who may be assisting with filling out application forms. They may be abroad, maybe wherever in the world you are, because and why I say that we put out special effort to reach out to those outside the UK, Jamaica, Barbados, USA, Nigeria, Ghana, wherever in the world you are, because the impact is across the world. Those impacted are all across the world. If you're gonna be submitting a compensation claim, I would suggest you use the guidance note that you can have a good understanding of what is relative and what applies as far as the story that you're going to tell. And I use the term story loosely, because what you do not want to do is submitting information that is totally irrelevant, because that information that is submitted that is totally irrelevant can be a distraction, and then the Home Office will use it to deflect from the actual event. Nothing wrong with presenting a story in the following manner. My mother came from the UK, came to the UK in 1968. I subsequently joined them in 1969 or whatever. I was working at ABC. After working at ABC factory for a number of years, employer said to me, in such a date, I need to bring in passport to prove that I've got a right to work in the UK. The documentation I brought in, they were not happy with. I ended up losing my job, etc., etc. Is not the latest works of Shakespeare. Simple, straightforward English, basic English. Put the information there, date it, and if we can get evidence to it, that's good. So it's about presenting the information that is relevant. Don't want to be in about things that are totally relevant. So by that time, you get to the stage where when you have decided to make an application, you need to understand exactly what is relevant, that you're not guessing. Read the guidance note, and if you are assisting someone, you should have a good understanding of the case worker guidance for both compensation and status. I think we've got a couple of hands raised, Garrick.
Yes, thank you, Roland, for that. Just before I get on to Andrea, let me just make this point. And it's important because Roland just mentioned, he gave you a scenario how to tell your story. But we always encourage people, whatever they put on paper should be as factual as they can. We're not encouraging people to tell lies, something that is not right or not correct, because you need to put the information as close to what you remember your experience, because it's not about giving false information. And let me just read the final declaration of your claim, which is the last point. It actually says this: I confirm that to the best of my knowledge and belief, the following information given in this application is correct. I understand that I may be liable for prosecution if I have knowingly or recklessly provide false information. And then they give you the data protection 2018. And that is the last page of your claim that need to be signed by yourself, sign and date. So it is important that you present factual information to the best of your ability. If you couldn't remember the month you lost your job, it doesn't matter, but you know the year. If you don't remember the postcode where you used to work, you know what the company name was and street, etc. You're giving factual information. You're not making up stories that is not true. There's a warning on that. Yeah, it's not about making up story that is not true, because you'll be asked, to produce some evidence where the Home Office saying, let me just check this out, etc. So it's important. And I like the scenario that Roland just gave, what year your parents came, when you join your parents, your employment, etc. So you can see the sort of, factual information coming from, your parents, yourself, etc. Right? We need to establish that clearly, right? And we're not encouraging you to put any false information on paper. Let me take Andrea question, please.
Yeah, thank you. I guess it's like my grandparents came over here in 1968, and my grandma was a nurse, and but she wasn't able to work because when she came over, she just had my mum, and she literally jumped on a plane like a few days after that. She's obviously not alive now. So can we make a claim on that basis that she lost earnings because she wasn't able to work due to her postnatal depression, because she was never able to work like in her entire life. So, for example, when she died, my mum and my auntie, who were left in St. Lucia, were the ones that looked after her, but they had to fight for her care. Sorry, I'm getting a bit emotional about this.
Okay.
And
let me just pause there. I hear what you're saying. Just pause for a moment. So what we're thinking about is whether or not your parents, your mom who's no longer here is a deceased person, whether or not a claim can be made. Roland, I'll invite you into this question, please. Whether a claim can be now made for a deceased person. And one of the things that we need to establish is, when you already given us a date, 1960 something, when your mother was here. And the important question is about, the person being settled. So they arrived before 1973, and it's whether they were settled in the UK before they died. Roland?
In that case, based on what you've just said, she came to the UK before the 1st of January, 1973. Quick question, Andrea. Was she in the UK on the 1st of January, 73?
Yeah, she never went back to St. Lucia.
Okay, let's leave it there. I get that. So she was here, came before 73, was here in 73. So we mentioned earlier about eligibility and entitlement. She would be eligible, or you could submit a deceased estate claim. That would be eligible. However, would she be entitled? Now, based on what you said to me, what you said is that, so did you say a family member was left in St. Lucia and she didn't get the opportunity to look after them correctly? Just elaborate on how she, without going into too much details, don't want any name. Yeah.
So my auntie was a year old and my mum was born. And then when my mum was born, they came over to the UK. My auntie and my mum didn't come to the UK until they were 12 and 13 years old. And my grandparents didn't return back to St. Lucia.
Right. You said this is a bit emotional. I'm not going to ask any further question.
What I'm going to suggest, now. One second.
Hold on, Gary. I think this is one where it should be one-to-one, but I'm going to answer in general.
I'm just going to suggest that. So after this session, we want to reach out to Andrea outside of this platform so we can, you can have a better conversation. That would be the best way to deal with this case.
So Andrea will make direct contact with you, right? And then, but I'm going to answer in generality because I come across quite a number of these, and I'm going to give a scenario, and this would not be and does not apply to Andrea's case. Now, I don't know how many of you have seen Burial Children. That's Nadine White's documentary, and it's those that were left behind after the parent came here, or some of them came after. Those that were left behind because they didn't get to come to the UK and they were inconvenienced, went through a lot of stress, etc., etc. As the scheme is at the moment, I remember the scheme that we're presenting is a scheme as it is at the moment, not the scheme that we would like. As the scheme is at the moment, they will not be compensated. There's no category in the scheme for those that were left behind and had a substandard life, so to speak. And I know it because I'm talking from personal experience to a certain extent because I have such family members. Quite a number of individuals over the past couple of years applied to the scheme, assuming that the so-called burial children and those left behind can apply to the scheme for compensation. In order for you to be entitled to compensation, you would have to demonstrate that it was due to your inability to prove that you've got a right to be in the UK. I know that's a mouthful. You have to prove that it was due to the Home Office's action or inaction that you experienced what you experienced. It can't be due to your parents' action or anyone else's action. It has to be specifically due to the Home Office's incompetence, maladministration, etc., etc. That's why we always say, understand the guidance note, read the guidance note as to what applies to applying to the scheme. What would make you entitled to compensation? The guidance note of the particular category that you're applying for, and if you're assisting others, you should always understand the caseworker guidance for both status and compensation. Andrea may contact with us, or Gary will contact her directly and have that discussion. I think there's another one. Are there any other questions?
Sorry, I was talking without knowing that my microphone was off. Yeah. No, I can't see any further hands at the moment, but let me just say, just in relation to the close family guidance, it's only 24 pages, unlike the 40-odd pages for primary claimant. But what Roland has done is giving you the reference to the caseworker guidance, which is a big document, a very big document that require a lot of reading to understand what are what are the caseworkers looking for on your application. And as we keep repeating, it's important how you actually populate your application, how you tell your story, how you describe what has happened to you as a result, not somebody else's story. This is your story. What has happened to you, how you've been impacted, what loss you have suffered. And if you suffer no loss, then there is no compensation to be had. Right? There are many people who have not suffered loss, and all they've done is just rectify their status, and that's it. Yeah, no loss. But where loss has happened, then you will need to make sure that you are describing that correctly, so that when the caseworker receive your application and start to go through your application and read it carefully, and they conclude that you haven't got a case, it's because of you not putting sufficient information on the application for them to come to that conclusion. And we keep saying this, please, before you submit any application, get somebody to have a look at the application that can, a third eye, as it were, just to look over the application and see if you've covered the points sufficiently. That is very important.
Gary, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Yeah. And that is where an advocate will be able to help and assist you, because you need some further help. And I've given you the information, Liverpool Advocates for Windrush. You can find us on liverpooladvocatesforwindrush.org. You will see our logo. You will see the page there with the law symbol as you Google, and you will see email address, telephone number, and WhatsApp contact, etc. So please use that service. It is an advocacy service to help individual application, whether status or compensation. That is what it's there to do. So 24 pages of close family guidance and the caseworker's guidance are two important documents to be read before you actually finalize your application. This is a paper copy, and we're talking about an online application, but this is a paper copy of the Home Office application that have to be completed. Version, and this date is the May 2023. We met just a couple weeks ago in Brixton, and the Home Office brought application down, and you know, this is the copy, and it's the same thing online. You'll notice that all section must be completed, and you know, do not leave any question blank. There's a good reason why I say that. Do not leave any question blank. If a question does not apply, then you can actually not applicable and put a line across, but do not leave it blank. You leave it blank, they will send it back to you thinking that you missed something out. So, you know, page by page, you can see this is the hard copy version, but the online version is the same question. You go through each of them, then it asks for documents supporting your application. So document to support your application if you have such document. What document may help us decide your application? And I'll just give you some of the bullet points. It says passport, other documents showing you arrive in the UK. So passport, even if it expires, it doesn't matter. It actually shows when you arrive in the UK. Photocopy of passport or driving license or other document that show your identity. Marriage or civil partnership certificate, your birth certificate or adoption certificate, letters or document from government departments such as tax or benefit. If you do not have them, we may be able to check with our record. So they will do the check with DWP, etc., and tax office to make sure that you're in the system. Letters, document from your employer or previous employer, past employer. Letters or document from your doctor or hospital. Letters or document from your school or college. Certificate or qualification obtained in the UK if you study something, etc. So these are documents that the Home Office expect for you to include with your application. And then there's a number of questions that require you to tick a box. As I said, you know, don't leave things blank. Don't apply, you state don't apply. And then this question actually says this: the application form can only be used if you're in the UK and you are a national of a Commonwealth country or group listed in the Windrush policy scheme. And there are 65 countries listed on the Home Office. And we've been trying to actually get this information out to many countries and people who do not understand Windrush, thinking Windrush is only a Caribbean issue. So we're trying to change the narrative. 65 countries on the Home Office information website that's affected. So again, you know, you need to tick the appropriate boxes to confirm, you know, when you arrive in the UK, etc. So, you know, that's just a quick summary of some of the questions. I can't go through the entire application, but just picking out some of the questions that need to be answered. As I said, it again asks the question when you arrive in the UK, you know, by the 1st of January 1973, and your settled status, whether your status lapse, if you went out the UK.
I think me and Shaq went to. I took them out the
Could
fridge.
you mute that person, please?
Yeah, we got a couple of hands raised, please.
Yeah, 1 second. Yeah. So again, I'm just using the paper copy.
What I was saying
it's
is
the same information online that you'll be making your application. Joy?
No,
Yeah.
me and Shaq went. When I went to, you see, when you go to Lidl, the things that I'm supposed to pick up.
Hang on a minute. Yeah.
Hold on, Gary. Just hold on, please.
Who is first?
I'm before Joy, but just hold on, please. Okay. Eric, just a clarification, because this really applies to close family members.
Yeah.
It's not just if you have suffered loss, if you have been impacted, but you may have not suffered loss, but you may have been impacted emotionally, stress, anxiety, etc., etc. Okay, and it can apply on the basis of only being your life, impact on life. That is a particular category. So when it comes and that applies to close family member, impact on life, that is your stress, your inconvenience, etc., etc. Okay.
Yeah. That is probably the most important part of the application, because that impact is going to really look into the different aspect how you've suffered. And one of the things that we've always stressed, for evidence, if you have suffered trauma over a period of time and you've been getting treatment, whether in a hospital or through other means of charity, etc. That information is very, very important, because when you speak about the impact, they want to know, well, where's the evidence of this? Now, in order to gather medical evidence, you do not have to pay for a report from your doctor. You go to your doctor, your GP, and the reception will ask for a summary of your case, and all they will do is print out, right, free of charge, right, a summary of your situation, what medication you've been using, the doctors prescribe, etc. Do not pay for any special reports to show that you've been impacted and you spend time in the hospital, etc. All that record will be on your medical notes from your GP.
I've come across a number of close family members, and I encourage them to pay. They have not had any loss and so on. So, especially those that intend to apply as close family member. Most cases is to do with the impact on life, how you are impacted emotionally, etc. I need to emphasize that point.
And we will keep emphasizing that point, Roland, because the impact on lives is also the area where homelessness and other things is looked at, the time that you spend being homeless. All that is part of the impact on life, and it's not just yourself, but other family members and children. So that is the most important part of your application, because that is where your story about what has happened to you, and that is the area that the caseworker is going to be looking to see, how you've actually expressed that, whether or not they're convinced that you suffer loss, you've been impacted. And these words are interchangeable: suffer loss, being impacted. You find these words is used across the guidance.
Joy has got her hand up.
Yes, Joy, can I come to you now, please?
Yeah, sure. Greetings, everyone. For example, evidence of documentation. If you say the Home Office has misplaced, lost, destroyed that evidence, and you have evidence of your status here, but yet you were refused How does that work? What about those who are here, who are there 30, 40 years? Will the NHS keep a record of your medical record? Would they have that record of it? If the Home Office could lose it, maybe they could lose it too. What
Joy,
about the tax office?
Can I respond to that, Garrett?
Sure.
There are various ways of acquiring records, getting copies of records. Please do not make that be a deterrent to you. If you worked in the UK, then there should be tax records of you working in the UK. And a lot of individuals I hear say a lot of times that I have applied for a pension, I do not meet that threshold. Not because they have not met the threshold, that does not mean they do not have the records. There are various ways of establishing that you were in the UK before the 1st of January 1973 or whenever. And that is what we do as well, assist with establishing that you were here in the UK. I've got a couple of cases in Nigeria where their applications were declined because they couldn't get the school record and our pension record, and I assist them in getting that. We assist them in getting those records. Okay.
Okay.
So
that was a question
ways,
also for anyone here on the platform.
There are ways of getting those records.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah, I mean, it's good for us to repeat this because it will apply to other people. Sometimes an individual think that they have to go and find all this information going back 40 years, etc. And the company has gone out of business. They went out of business. The factory been demolished, etc. And there's nowhere to find it, but there is a way to find it. And so we know that DWP, HMSC, NHS, they do share information. There is an issue though as to how far back they would, because we're getting this issue now with Home Office going back to a particular time in terms of your claim. Don't be thinking that you will get compensation for 50 years of claim, because they will not do that. They'll only go back to a particular period of time, year, in making that calculation. And don't be thinking that your loss is going to be everything that you've lost. That is again not the case. People who've lost their house for £250,000, etc. They don't get £250,000 compensation plus anything. So what we've tried to do is to provide as much information as you can. What you have, what you don't have, can be obtained from other sources, as just mentioned. But what you have, you should use. A lot of us will have our very first passport that expired 20 years ago, whatever. We'll have that. If we went to school, our GCSE, our CSE, whatever we qualify, we will have that. People don't destroy those things. You will have it. Yeah. So there's quite a bit of information that we will have ourselves. And I keep saying this, because the passport has expired, you do not destroy it. You don't throw it away. You keep it for record. I still have all of my passports in hand going back, and I have my original passport when I came to this country. My Jamaican passport, I have it. So keep all these documents. There are evidence as to when you arrive in the UK, and when you hear what you're doing, there'll be other means of getting that information. So don't worry about trying to find everything. What you have is what you will provide, and what you haven't got, as the note says, that we will cross-check with other government departments, etc. Once we've got your full name and your national insurance number, or even your national health number. A lot of people don't know that you've got a national health number, right? It's there. Every time you get a prescription and you see it's up there, your national number, you should always make a note of it. right? They can identify who you are with your national health number as well as your NI. So there are different places where you can get information. If you kept all your P60s over the years, pay slips, etc. It's funny you should say that. You know, I have a box with my very first pay slip, very first job I had. I have it here.
Yeah,
so information's out there.
Can I just make a point here? Because this is important.
Yeah.
When it comes to loss of earnings, if you were out of work due to the Home Office or due to your inability to prove that you've got a right to be in the UK, whatever term one to use, if you are out of work for 200 years due to the Home Office, you should be compensated for 200 years. You know why I say that? That's what it actually says in the guidance note. The caseworker guidance note that the caseworkers should be following says the clock should start at the point you lost your job or at the point you were told you're not allowed to work in the UK, and it should stop at some point after. I think it's 3 months. After when you get another job or you got documentation stating that you've got a right to be in the UK. I know in many cases, the caseworkers aren't following that, but please do not be taking anything less than that. So I know they're making offers as if they win some bidding game or anything like that. So if you are earning 20,000 per annum post taxes, after taxes, or whatever term you want to use, and you are out of that job for 8 years, 8 multiplied by 20,000, 160,000. If they offer you 159,000, you should not be taking it. And the reason why you should not take that offer is because 159,000 is less than 160,000. That's what is stipulated in the guidance. So that's why I encourage everyone, before you make an application, have the best understanding of the caseworker guidance. That means when they write back to you and make an offer that is less than that amount, you write back to them and say, this is what it says in the guidance note. This is what you should be doing. And back to you, Gary.
Thank you for that. And now that's a very good point. And this is why we keep making reference to all the guidance that is out there. You know, make sure you have access to the guidance so that you have a reference point. You can use that, as Roland says, use that as a reference point to say, well, okay, I'm sorry, I'm not going to accept that, you know, because guidance says X, Y. Very important. Now, we've said this before, to find the guidance for each of the claim, you go on to the .gov.uk/Windrush compensation scheme, and you can / for everything else you want to know. Primary claimant, close family, deceased, etc. And you will get all the information, right? It's there. No different from what we have. It's the same information that's out there. So you can access that information directly yourself. Now, for the next 10 minutes or so, I'm just going to talk about the deceased estate. If you remember, when Roland gave the close family, he said there is no difference between a primary claimant and the deceased. The only difference is that the person have passed who were eligible to apply as a primary claimant. And as a result, now, yes, another member of the family is going to make that application. A representative of the family is going to make that application on behalf of the person deceased. Now, what's important, again, we have guidance for deceased estate. And it's important that you read and follow the information. One very important part of that guidance is to make sure that the person that you're going to be claiming for, who's deceased, is actually deceased. Yes, they're actually deceased. They are dead, right? So you're not claiming no false claim, etc. They are dead. And the Home Office is not going to just accept the fact that you says, yes, they died in 1967, etc. No, we want some proof. Yes. And then we need documentation to show that the person died on this date, etc. Now, here comes the issue. You have to produce the evidence. And a lot of our community don't make wills. And when somebody dies, there is problem in the family. And everybody is coming and, you know, having something to say and want to find out, you know, who should get X, Y, Z. So what the Home Office have said is that we being the Home Office, will pay up to £1,500, yes, for you to get the right documentation to prove that the person is really deceased. Yes? Probate. Yes? Without that, I'm sorry, the claim won't be a claim. Can you just make a couple of comments on that, Roland? Very important, please.
So when you make a deceased estate claim, it needs to go to a process.
Your audio is not clear, Roland.
Is to establish that
your audio is going in and out.
Is
Sorry.
it better now? Hold on, please. Hold on. Is the audio better now?
Yes, like that, please.
Right. So when you're gonna make an application for a deceased estate, it needs to be the next of kin or the executor of the deceased estate. So if there's no will, it needs to be established that you've got the right, so to speak, to be that person that's going to carry or make the claim or carry the claim forward. So if you're outside the UK, for instance, you'll need a letter from a solicitor, a couple of paragraphs, nothing elaborate, and then the death certificate of the deceased to establish. So the letter from the lawyer, solicitor, is going to be along the lines of, I, Mr. XYZ, can establish that this individual is deceased, I've done the necessary check, etc., etc. Here enclosed the death certificate. Then that will be accepted by the Home Office. And also establish that you've got the right, because there may be 6, 7 children for this individual. So that's what needs to be done in brief. And then the charges, the legal costs, whatever, all the costs will be covered, should be covered with this £1,500, up to £1,500. That's it really. And if you made the payment up front, then you can claim it back. Or alternatively, what you can ask the solicitor, stroke lawyer, attorney, whatever term you want to use, is to submit an invoice prior to actually going ahead and do the work, and then you go from there. But it's about engaging. They engage with a representative like ourselves, engage the Home Office, let them know exactly what it is. But frankly speaking, me, Roland Houseland, I really refer claimants to the individual and the Home Office as a first point of contact, because of a number of instances where individuals contacted the Home Office and they're given misleading information by the caseworker. My attitude towards the Home Office is the wrong door. They should not be the first point of contact. Home Office is the one that took in the back of the police jeep, end up with a few broken ribs, and you've got to go to said police station, see the said sergeant, and be saying to the police sergeant, can I make a claim for compensation? How do I go make the claim for such compensation? It is counterintuitive for the Home Office to be treating you with the amount, with the due respect you should be treated, and be giving you the restorative justice you deserve.
Thank you for that, Roland. Okay, so let me just conclude on this bit. So we've just been focusing on the deceased estate claim. And let me just read directly.
Very exciting job because the limited. Garrett.
Yes.
Yeah, because we're limited on time. We've only got 4 minutes left. There's a question in the chat from Hobie. Just a minute, please. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, your volume keep going up and down, your audio.
Right. Can I invite Bobie, Bobby, B-O-B-I-E? Can I invite you, because we only got minutes. Can I invite you to ask a question on mic, please?
Please, yes. Thank you very much, Roland. Hi, everybody. Good afternoon. I just raised a point in a chat asking about rejected claims and the fact that the timeline for disputing that claim has elapsed. What is the procedure for that one? So currently, that's the situation I find myself in. To be honest,
Obi, I've made contact with you. With this particular one, I rather do a one-to-one with you. So
okay, understood.
The question, the question is valid and can be asked. However, please do not go into any details. Okay. In some cases, I answer that in generality. In some cases, that guideline is not strictly followed.
Okay.
But I
understood.
Speak to you.
Garrett, thank you for that.
You can elaborate on that one, Garrett.
Yeah, thank you. Your audio is still going in and out, Roland. I don't know what's happening with your audio. We're not getting everything that you've said. Okay, just before we conclude, so let me just repeat the support that you're able to access. So throughout, I've mentioned how you can get help with your application. That's everything to do around the application, whether that will be a question or help in submitting, understanding which, how to phrase this particular question, etc. So, Justice for Windrush Generation, we're working closely with Liverpool advocates for Windrush who do the legal work, the legal side of the support. And I've given you the website. Justice for Windrush Generation is the campaigning organization, and we're working closely with Liverpool advocates for Windrush.org. And I've shown you, when you go online, you will see that sign says law. As you Google Liverpool advocates for Windrush.org, you will see that sign there, and you can make contact through email or through a telephone contact. So that's around the advocacy and helping you with the application process. What we've said throughout, that the information we're using is the same information that is in the public domain. The only difference that we spend a lot of time reading this information, searching for updates, etc., have lived experience of cases, so we know a little bit more than the average person, but we don't know everything about the scheme. And so, we also have to check with the Home Office. We're in conversation with the Home Office on a regular basis, and we raise questions with the Home Office about certain things, why they did this, and that's how we're trying to make improvement to the scheme, as well as our campaigning work with MPs to get changes to the current scheme and where the scheme sit with the Home Office as it is at the moment. So, just in conclusion, we started off at 2:00 by introducing the Windrush compensation scheme and status. And then we went through the eligibility criteria as to who can apply to the scheme. And we gave you dates. We gave you dates of 1973 from a Commonwealth country, and we gave you dates from any other country, 1988. Sometime you hear the expression, the 1st of January, 89, but the Home Office still have December 1988 on their notes. Then we talk about primary claimant and the guidance supporting that, 44 pages. Then we went into the close family claim, and the guidance is 24 pages. And then we just finally spoke about deceased estate, which is no different from primary claimant, but some legal work need to be done for you to gather the evidence, probate, and to make sure that you have the right documentation, and the Home Office will reimburse up to £1,500. And let me just finish on that point. We will reimburse probate fee up to £1,500 in legal costs. And then it says, the legal costs are associated with the probate application process only, not the administration of the estate. Notice the difference, right? Just the probate bit. You provide evidence of costs you incur, such as copies of receipts or invoices, to prove that you've paid money. And Roland mentioned the fact that the best way is to get your legal person to actually invoice the Home Office directly, so the payment, you're not dealing with any money, it goes directly to the legal people. So that brings us to the end of our session this afternoon, our informal chat. The next session is the end of the month, twice. But next week we have the Liverpool Advocates for Windrush Q&A. That's for questions specifically around getting a better understanding about either immigration or a particular aspect of the scheme, where we take questions in advance and provide you with informed response. So those sessions happen on the first and last Sunday of the month. So that is sponsored by Liverpool Advocates for Windrush.org. First and third is the Q&A. Our sessions are second and last of the month is the Windrush Sunday chat. So there's ample opportunity for engaging and getting a better understanding of the scheme and what support is out there to help you. In addition to what we do here on the Sunday, we also do other things out there in the public. So, Roland, would you like to tell people about what's happening in Balham on the 9th of March?
Yeah, 9th of March, Saturday, 9th of March at...
Your audio is still going, it's going in and out.
Yeah, give me a second. Let me just change the location a bit. Can you hear me better now?
Yeah, it's better, yeah.
Yes, Saturday, 9th of March from 3:30 to 6:30 p.m. at in Balham. I've not got a full address here, but it will be circulated.
Chestnut 45 Chestnut Grove.
Balham, oh yeah, that's it. 45
Chestnut Grove, Balham, Southwest 12.
Yeah. We'll be
5 minutes from Balham Tube Station.
3:30 p.m. to 6:30 p.m. Professor Livermore will be there. He's the independent advisor to the scheme. The Windrush compensation team, engagement team, they've got an engagement team that is responsible for going into the community and spread the word about the Windrush scheme. They will be there, and there are a few other people at
Windrush Justice Clinic. We got some lawyers there, etc. So this will be a physical.
They'll be there. So there's 2 sessions that are going to take place on the day. First session is about the scheme, presenting the Windrush scheme. That's for about an hour and 15 minutes. After that, we'll take a break. Then after that, we'll have a round table where we'll go into the different categories and the feelings of the scheme, etc., etc. We'll have a discussion with Professor Livermore about the scheme. So round table discussion. So it should be a good event. If you're outside the UK, it will be on Zoom. You can join us with the same Zoom link that I used today. Google the Windrush Compensation Scheme International Engagement. Windrush Compensation Scheme International Engagement. Drop that into Google and then it should come up somewhere close to the top on Eventbrite. Alternatively, my email address is there, my telephone number is there. You can give me a call. Back to you, Derek.
Excellent. Thank you very much. So, please come and join us in Balham. It's face-to-face. If you can't make it face-to-face, then as Roland says, hybrid, you can join the hybrid, but we prefer for you to come and meet us face-to-face so we can have a informal conversation. And of course, the Home Office team will be there. So if you need to have a one-to-one, then you can, have a one-to-one conversation separately, with them. They probably 4 or 5 members of the team will be there. So please spread the word, let people know. 9th of March, Balham, 45 Chestnut Grove, and it's in the Academy School building, 5 minutes from the train station. So that's the end of our afternoon session. Thank you very much for your attention and for listening. And please, when you leave this platform, please share the information that you learned today. If it's for the first time you attended, please tell other people about this platform and how they can get more information. But also, if you visit our website, justiceforwindrushgeneration.co.uk, all our eligibility information and Home Office information is there on our website. So that just wish you a very pleasant evening and enjoy the rest of your evening. And if you haven't started your cooking yet, I think it's time you start to do your cooking now for the dinner. Yes, because I'll be going into the kitchen now and I'll be looking after my evening meal. So thank you and I hope to see you soon. Bye-bye for now.
Thank you, gentlemen. God bless you guys. Thank you.